Good evening, everyone. I'd like to appreciate your presence at the second forum of No Global, and I'd like to express my heartily appreciation to Dr. Voevoda and Dr. Kia for their acceptance of our invitation. Please accept my greetings and my warm welcome. Uh, Today we are hosting two guests, Dr. Voevoda and Dr. Kia. Dr. Voevoda, the Associate Professor of Cultural Studies, Head of Department of Pedagogy and Psychology, University of Foreign Ministry, MGIMO of Russia. And Dr. Kia, Associate Professor of Cultural Studies, Institute of Sociology and Cultural Studies, Tehran University. So today, the discussion of this forum under the name of Neo Global will be on the subject of virtual space and national identity. This is a subject which is widely discussed. However, today the innovation is that we are hosting two guests from two different cultures, and these two guests, two professors, are going to familiarize us with the different ways these two countries are treating virtual space and the way that it influences national identity. So with the digital technology penetrating every aspects of life, new ways of doing things and doing and culture is undermining the stabilities. So let's see how these two countries are treating these new ways of doing things and the threats, if you can call them threats, of virtual space. Let's invite Dr. Voevoda to start her lecture, and then we'll have the discussion. We are listening, please.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody. Dear colleagues, I'm sincerely happy to be present here, although virtually. I hope one day I will be able to see you all in person. And
We hope so.
it is a pleasure and a great honor to be able to discuss the impact of digitalization on our life, and the impact of cyberspace communication on the changing sense of national identity. Sorry. It is especially relevant when we speak about young people, about students whom we see as our future. National identity is relevant to various spheres of scientific knowledge and research, to political studies, to sociology, psychology, and cultural studies. I think we all agree that national identity and identity as such is a multifaceted concept. It implies a sense of belonging to the community of a definite state or nation. And as a collective phenomenon, national identity can arise as a direct result of the presence of elements from the common points, the so-called common points in people's daily lives, such as territory, national symbols, language, the nation's historical past, and cultural artifacts, religion, family, holidays, literature, visual and applied arts. It can also include such, let us say, items or as such concepts as national dress, birthplace, family affiliation, and such like things. Technological progress in the area of communications and growing mobility of the people creates not only a single informational space, but political and cultural space as well. And the concept of national identity is closely connected with the political and cultural aspects of our life. And this narrow gap between the ways a country is regarded around the world and by its own people, by its own population. Again, it is a double faceted phenomenon of national identity. And it prompts attempts of various groups to influence the former or the latter, the individual national identity and the identity of society as a whole. There is no need to spend time on well-known and documented instances when the media were used to shape the image of certain nations in the international public opinion. The unified broadcast space has a well-defined pro-Western bias. Both Russia and Iran are painted black and regarded by Western digital media as evil empires. And that makes part of our young people think that when the whole world has denounced their state, it is shameful and even dangerous to identify themselves as citizens or citizens belonging to this particular state. The spread of digital technologies has led to a new form of communication. In fact, communication has transferred to the cyberspace with its messengers, blogs, social networks, emails full of spam, and with the immediate spread of information. The multiple virtual identities are based on the value scenarios represented in the cyberspace. There is no denying the importance of political video content in social networks for forming behavioral patterns of teenagers and young adults. And they consume the information primarily from the internet-based sources. Video blogs do not only make an integral part of mobilizing public opinion, but also as an effective channel for communication. And here there are I would like to speak about two major channels of communication. Communication of political elites with representatives of civic communities, and communication of opposition leaders with their supporters and the socially and politically unsatisfied representatives of society. Now it is time to speak about the pros and cons of cyberspace in the aspect of building or ruining national identity. I've come close to it. This process implies a competition of meanings and absence of mandatory binding to real identity of an individual or a community. Cyberspace presents good opportunities for spreading political, ideological, and culturally biased information. And one of these aspects is, or one of these opportunities is, fake information disrupting trust in the state. The news reader will, a young person, or maybe an older person, finds a piece of news in the internet. The news redirects the individuals to the sites which they are meant to visit and read or watch more fake information, and so on and so forth. This chain is endless and thus begins or continues the process of brainwashing. Well, for example, during and after the COVID-19 pandemic, in Russia, there appeared information that the Russian Sputnik vaccine leads to infertility. Just imagine that impact on families, on men and women alike. Then there appeared information that vaccination would become compulsory and include overall chipping of all the population, and that would be done in order to keep track of every single person. At the same time, there were rumors that the government would not allow people who avoid vaccination to get to their workplaces, thus leaving them jobless and penniless. Well, this was all fake news, but it spread momentarily. Another opportunity is using digital devices for arranging flash mobs and rallies of civil disobedience and even riots. Again, it rocks the boat, and thus it disrupts trust in the states and serves the process of ruining national identity. When Alexei Navalny was arrested and sentenced for large-scale fraud, his supporters organized numerous rallies inviting paid teenagers, even school children, to participate in the rallies, although they knew perfectly well that the rallies were forbidden. And when the school children were detained by the police and then sent home from police stations, the general idea spread in the blogs was, goodness gracious, they arrest even children, denounce that state. Naturally, teenagers and their parents did not want to identify themselves with such a state. Another problem is interaction in the cyberspace aimed at disrupting national identity and replacing it with ethnic identity. Well, you know that Russia is a multi-ethnic, multicultural, and multi-confessional state. And representatives of its various ethnic regions have a sense of ethnic identity, along with national identity. Half the residents of the Republic of Sakha-Yakutia, that is in the far north, well, in fact, it is the northeast of the country. And Sakha-Yakutia is larger than Argentine. So half the population identify themselves as belonging to the Yakut ethnic culture. But when they speak about their national identity, it is Russian. And in the Russian language, there are two different words, similar but different. They even sound different. But they are rendered the same in English. One word means an ethnic Russian, Русский. The other implies belonging to the state of Russia, Российский. It is an important detail which is played upon in English language blogs. When someone writes, well, I'm Russian, meaning I'm from Russia, they question, you identify yourself as Russian. I thought you were a Chechen or a Tatar. And no answer to this can be better than that given by the head of the Chechen Republic, Ramzan Kadyrov. He said, brothers, we're Chechens, but we're all citizens of the Russian Federation. Thus, I identify myself as Russian. This is what was said by the Chechen leader. Well, today, such like activities can be observed in the Crimea. Crimean Tatars are being called to denounce national identity and recognize themselves only as an ethnic community. They are called to secede from Russia and proclaim independence because before 1783, Crimea had been a Tatar Khanate, well, an independent state. And again, these activities are not carried out openly, but in the cyberspace, but the results are real. I have a friend who lives in central Crimea. She's Russian, but both her son and daughter are married to Crimean Tatars. And one of her grandsons recently said, Granny, when I grow up, I wouldn't like to be Russian. I will be a Tatar, like my grandpa. My friend said, Well, you live in Russia and you're a citizen of the Russian Federation. So what? You can be a Tatar ethnically with Tatar culture, but you are Russian by your citizenship. So you must take pride in your country. Well, the young man, well, he's a teenager in his mid-teens. He thought and said, well, I will think it over and speak to my grandpa. Well, um, his grandpa prefers to adhere to ethnic identity. Well, another serious risk of cyberspace communication is language disruption. Browsing the internet, teenagers, young adults, and their parents alike feel so much at home in the English language world that they tend to neglect their mother tongue. When you listen to young Russians whose mother tongue is Russian, when you listen to them speaking Russian, you will see that half of the words are not Russian. They are borrowings or transliterations from English. Not even legal borrowings. I mean, when I say legal borrowings, I mean that they are not they're not registered in the dictionary. Well, the problem is not only an increasing number of loan words substituting the existing Russian ones, but the loss of pride in the Russian language. And as the art of writing now appears to be the privilege not only of writers and poets, but or men of letters and women, it is open to anyone, and the internet is full of unspelled and ungrammatical phrases, and these are copied by children. Even the word order seems to be unknown in the virtual space. But the problem is being solved. I think it was about 10 days ago that our parliament, the State Duma, accepted the bill. Well, it will become law when it is signed by the president. That the future law that protects the Russian language. And, well, part of my compatriots started hue and cry in the internet saying, well, I'm going to ban all English words, all terms that have become part of economic studies, political studies, and so on and so forth. But the big idea is that we should return to the Russian language. By the way, in Moscow and in many other cities, shops, organizations, places of interest are obliged to give the names of these organizations in Russian, even if it is transliteration. After that, that can be spelled in English, French, or any other language. Another aspect of the same problem is an attempt to sound very sophisticated. And Western-like patterns, Western-like phrases seem to be very modern, very up-to-date. And both young people and older generation, they try to pattern political and public figures and events. Well, even at our university, which is aimed to teach future diplomats and specialists in international relations who are supposed to defend the interests of the country. We hear unnecessary loan words. And we asked when we had a couple of conferences in autumn, and instead of the familiar words, I'm sorry, instead of familiar words in Russian, we saw speakers, that is, full transliteration from English. And when someone came up to me and asked, how many speakers have you got for today or tomorrow? I said, we have no speakers. We have выступающие, people who are going to speak. One of the major components of national identity is the family. Ours is a family-based culture, and Western ideas disrupting the institution of the family have reached Russia as well. There is an increasing number of young people who reject marriage as an institution and live out of wedlock. Many praise the idea of being child-free, but the idea of legalizing one-sex marriages is strongly denounced. Again, where do people get all this information? From the internet, from messengers, from anywhere, from cyberspace. Speaking about the historical past, which is also one of the components of national identity. The presence of cyberspace in our life has its benefits and problems. For one thing, it is the internet sites and blogs that are trying to instill the idea that the Second World War, the great patriotic war for us, was won by the United States of America. But at the same time, there is no denying the fact that Victory Day is one of the major symbols of national identity in Russia. Last May, there were a few calls to stop celebrating Victory Day and rename it as the Day of Grief and Memory. Grief for the deceased and memory for everyone who fell in the war. But the public indignation was formidable. And for several years now, we have had a possibility to hold quite a new festivity, the Immortal Regiment in cyberspace. What is the Immortal Regiment? It is an event held on May Day when thousands of people, first in Moscow and then in other towns and cities, they hold actions in memory of their relatives who fought in the war, in the Second World War. They walk several kilometers, from 5 to 7 kilometers, holding the portraits of their relatives. Well, it's very, very moving. And in Moscow, it is led by the president. Again, you know, it's a sign of belonging to the state, of belonging to this nation. But during the pandemic, it was important to march along the streets. So the Immortal Regiment March was held in virtual space. And we placed the portraits of our relatives on a special site, and they were shown one by one. And again, they were fakes. For example, some people placed the portraits of the Nazi officers. They were quickly removed. Well, these are the cons. These are the problems of cyberspace. Today, the Immortal Regiment has two forms: marching along the streets and doing it virtually. Well, I've been thinking whether to speak or not about the conflict in Ukraine and the surrounding events, and then decided that it is closely connected with national identity, with strengthening national identity. Because after the start of the operation, many people left the country, especially actors. And well, the conflict naturally divided the society. Well, there are lots, or today I can say there were lots of people who, well, let's put it bluntly, who made money on concert activities, especially abroad, and when sanctions were introduced against Russia, they lost money. And then they left the country. And later, when in autumn partial mobilization was announced, this small, again, another part of men left the country trying to escape this partial mobilization, but the larger part remained, and hundreds volunteered to join the army. And again, it was the virtual space, the cyberspace, that united people. Cartoons, phrases, memes, well, they spread in a moment. The moment they appear, they go to hundreds and thousands of addresses. Thus, cyberspace managed to unite the nation. Another thing that serves the strengthening of national identity is what the state is doing to help people with their daily needs, like making an appointment with the doctor, getting documents, sending their child to a kindergarten, or enrolling a child to school, and so on and so forth. This can all be done in cyberspace. And that plays a huge role in bringing more trust to the state, because the state is doing it for the sake of the population. Well, I wouldn't like to be either very pessimistic or optimistic about the effects of cyberspace, because there is no getting away from it. We are already living with cyberspace, and in cyberspace we teach our children and students with the help of digital technologies. We all carry smartphones. We're all part of cyberspace. But the point is that we should not allow the cyberspace to ruin our national identity. Thank you. This is all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm ready to take questions.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the way you described and your vivid examples of the way Russia is treating with cyberspace really demonstrated the atmosphere of Russian cyberspace. And what I wanted to ask you, and Dr. Kia, actually there are two extremes about the way cyberspace affects identity and national identity. On one extreme, there are those who believe that cyberspace and as an instrument of globalization is a kind of threat, which uh, hinders and hurdles culture and national identity. On the other hand, there are those who believe that cyberspace can reinforce national feelings in the form of a backlash, or that it impacts different segments in society in dissimilar ways. So, as long as I understood, you believe that cyberspace is kind of expansion of Western power, which kind of threats the stability of Russian culture. And it's somehow, as I myself feel, it's the same atmosphere in our country, because both countries, though they might sound different, but both of them are believe in traditional cultures. So in our country, it's also the same. What? Let's ask Dr. Kia about his opinion. Is he pro or con to this idea that cyberspace threatens or reinforces national identity, or can there be any other way of considering it? For example, in the level of individual, for example, considering the way that cyberspace can influence individually based on somebody's age, education, or we can also regard the country level. So, Dr. Kia, what is your idea?
I'd like to thank everyone for coming this evening, and thanks for having me. And I would appreciate Dr. Voevoda for joining this meeting. First of all, I'm going to answer your question by introducing some concepts and articulating them to shape my ideas. I don't believe in dichotomy of national slash international identity. In the digital situation or in 21st century, we have a common identity. Common identity is entangled with different and various forces which have the capacity for affecting or being affected. These forces are in a permanent process of transformation. I mean, the identity is the name for a process, not for a rigid or stable position. Further, I want to divide the identity into two positions of points and waves. First, the material position of the identity is a point in which different forces intersect and converge to form materialized parts of identity. The materialized identity is defined by historical values and forces. The materialized identity grows out of condensation of the historical forces. The materialized identity comes from materialized life. Hence, materialized identity isn't about a human, his or her soul and body. Indeed, the materialized identity refers to materialized life. Materialized life is related to propositions, names, and visibilities. How do we call things? How do we name things? How are things visible? By these questions, we can problematize the identity. The identity is a point rising from the intersection of lines of forces. The intersection of lines of forces creates the materialized position that can be seen or and also can speak about it. And also we can speak about it. Therefore, the identity is seen and spoken. The identity as a point is associated with the past materialized life, struggling to continue the state of materiality of the identity. As a result, the continuity of the identity means the continuity of the material state of life. Also, continuity introduces the rigidity of the intersectional point of lines of forces since they are not able to move. From these, every turn and shift in lines of forces is deemed to be a transformation. Now I would prefer the waves as the second position of the identity. I invoke immanent philosophy to emphasize how the identity has an agential matter. Lines of force move like waves, superimposing on each other. This is how points of intersection are temporal. The movement of waves is the continuity of the contingency and permanent transformation rather than the rigidity of the points. Every point inherits wave movement, and this inheritance turns every point to a wave-like position. Waves affect each other, and intersectional points transform into the other points. Every point contains the potentiality of the occupation, the other position. Then identity as a point moves toward a new position and achieves its contingent characteristic. Past life and its actuality move toward the future and potentiality. The identity is a liminal position in which the past meets the future and actuality towards potentiality. Points and waves, past and future, actuality and potentiality are entangled with each other to rise up the identity. Now I come back to my beginning claim that identity is beyond the dichotomy of national international position. For me, nationality is a point and internationality is like a wave, and identity is a machine in a process of folding and unfolding. International waves fold into national points, and national points unfold into international waves, and this process makes transformations and developments in the identity. Consequently, there is an immanent plan in which the inside and the outside are entangled, and identity reveals its contingent quality. Now, if you ask about the soul of this entanglement, I would allude to the affection. Affection and being affected are not political and cultural strategies, but those are matters of life. Life is a process of transformation. The other means with capital O, the other has been always a suggestive position that affects feelings, and also the other stimulate the desire to achieve and make the other position. We no longer belong to the term internationality because internationality offers a sole and isolated existence prior to any involvement in a network. Inspired by Karen Barat, I use the term intra instead of inter to call intranationality. Intranationality presupposes that nationality as a phenomenon does not exist without involving in a network, or rather it is more appropriate to call net nationality instead of internationality. Okay,
that's it?
Yes, that's it.
So as long as I captured from your words, it sounds that you talks about the problematization of identity and the materialization of identity. You believe in kind of a cosmopolitan identity where the nationality and internationality is blurred. the borders are blurred.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, uh-huh. and and the potentials of the waves, which where these two can be entangled. True.
Yes, exactly.
So, in this case, so let's ask if Professor Voevoda has any idea. Does she go along with you? So, do you believe in kind of replacement of identity with kind of cosmopolitan identity? Replacement of national identity with a kind of global identity in this world where we feel not being not belonging to a special place, geographical place, rather kind of cosmopolitan identity. Am I right? As
Uh,
long as I captured from your words, I suppose you believe in kind of replacement of national identity by global identity. True. So
well,
let's.
I do not.
Mm-hmm.
I do not. And well, um, I think that the at the turn of the, if you permit, yeah, at the turn of the 21st century, in the late 1990s, there was the process of globalization, strange as it may seem, it brought about an acute interest to the ethnic roots, to ethnic cultures. And if 250 years ago, only one state started its major document, the Constitution, we, the people of the United States of America, we, the people of. Today, it is we, the people of a definite nation, we, the people even of a definite region. Well, we have, let us say, scientific and educational partners in the Republic of Moldova. Three of their university lecturers completed our postgraduate course and got their PhD degrees. And one of them comes from Gagauzia. It is an autonomous region, an autonomous territory, quite small. They are Russian Orthodox Christians speaking a Turkish language. But they take pride in their culture, they take pride in their ethnic identity, although they seem to have a double identity because they identify themselves with the Republic of Moldova. Well, they carry Moldovan passports, and at the same time, they are trying to preserve their ethnic identity. They're trying to preserve their mother tongue, which is included by UNESCO on the list of vulnerable languages. And here I think that the idea of national identity for them is very close to the idea of the idea of ethnic identities for them is very close to the idea of national identity. Well, we have two more Gagauz ladies taking the postgraduate course now. Well, you know, I would have believed that national identity is blurred away, it is fluid. If I didn't know those people, they're very, very ethnically oriented, although they live in the cyberspace as well as everybody else. They are trying. They are trying to instill the Gagauz alphabet on smartphones, on messengers. Well, they're making progress, but they are resisting this globalization which blurs away, or in fact, which sweeps away ethnic identity. So, the Basque province in Spain, it is the same. The Welsh in Great Britain, they identify themselves as British and as Welsh. So I think these two concepts now run parallel, and it is difficult to say which one is more important. For many people, their ethnic identity is important, but I think the big idea is to let our young people and those who are nearing 40 or something realize that the state they live in is not the cosmopolitan virtual world. It is their state. It is where they were born. It is where their children were born, where their children will live, if they're not child-free, I mean. So, well, again, not a couple of days ago, but about a week ago, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Cyril, addressed the nation saying that our society is threatened, our cultural roots are threatened by the intervention of alien cultures alien to the Russian mentality. And he did not only mean migrants, he meant the gay cultures, he meant those who neglect the traditional family. And a few days ago, our President Putin spoke about the need to work more with young people. And last week, there was a forum or a congress of a new youth organization. So actions are being taken, measures are being taken to somehow preserve both ethnic and national identity.
Thank you. So, thank you so much. It sounds that the same way that you believe that globalization and its instrument, the cyberspace, is threatening national identity as well as ethnic identity. The national identity has not yet been replaced by a kind of cosmopolitan. It's just a kind of threat, and the measures are being taken to resist it.
Yeah.
Let's ask Dr. Kia if he believes that this cyberspace can be a kind of instrument for Western cultural imperialism.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Let me answer your question based on my before discussion.
Yes, please.
Talking in terms of net nationality and intra-nationality doesn't consider the collapse of modern relations of the nation state. I prefer to suggest a different term, which is nation, state, other. Instead of nation and a state, I suggest this term, nation, state, other. This term functions as a network, and it supports the idea of net nationality. In pre-modern history, the relations among tribes may have been more based on wars and invasions. Historically, we cannot find any community without the problem of the other. ontologically, every inside has its own outside. There is an immanent association between the inside and the outside. The nation state is a modern relation between population and apparatuses of power. In this sense, for the modern nation state, the other had been formed into two positions. First, the modern inside, uh, first the modern outside, second the non-modern outside. By 21st century, I don't believe in the non-modern outside because the modernity is the soul of our era, and the difference is about how much and with what intensity has the soul of modernity been incarnated. From 19th and 21st century, since now the modernity has had sufficient time to affect every nation. However, the modernity has affected the world in various intensities. I mean the other in the immanent relation of the nation state other has a degree of intensity of the modernity. Therefore, the term nation state will be a myth if the nation state takes the other as a pure modern or a pure non-modern. When the nation-state relation with a low degree of the modernity deems the other as a pure modern, or the nation-state relation with a high degree of the modernity deems the other as a pure non-modern, then the myth of stability in the relation of nation-state reveals. If we pass the pure and the non-pure modernity of the otherness, we will succeed in passing the myth of stability in favor of topological quality in nation-state relation. The nation-state has a topological relation with the other. The nation-state relation unfolds to the other, and the other folds into the nation-state relation. Folding and unfolding are ontological qualities of the nation-state other. But the political work is to turn this ontological quality into a plastic quality. The politics are to keep the process of folding and unfolding under surveillance. Also, the degree of the surveillance in the nation-state relation with low intensity of the modernity is higher. The plastic quality of folding and unfolding are the interference of the politics means that national identity must be defended. The politics consider the other in the outside as a strange position that is able to infect the population. Therefore, national identity has been frozen. Following Judith Butler's inspiration of performativity, identity has a performative matter. Performativity must show historical and cultural values, and here performativity has the preservative function so as to make a caring nation. The concept of the caring nation is trapped in an obsession with the fear of being invaded and infected by any suggestive and ambiguous aesthetics and values. The result of conservative plastic quality of folding and unfolding is to lose the involvement in the net nationality, which is the direct threat to the existence of the nation state. In 20th century, we need to turn the matter of nation-state order as a process of folding and unfolding. The process of folding and unfolding keeps the identity in a process of becoming. I do believe the other in the outside is a chance to introduce the other face of truth. Yeah, that's it. That's my answer.
Sorry, what was your final question? You do believe that folding and unfolding is rendering a kind of a process, nature
Yeah.
for the
Yes.
identity,
Yes.
becoming,
Exactly. Yeah.
becoming,
Yes.
uh,
Exactly.
and then
I do believe the other in the outside is the chance to introduce the other face of truth.
the other face of truth.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Thank you. So, you talk about the articulation of the other
Yes.
and cyberspace as an instrument, as a space to articulate the other. Yes,
Yes. With
uh,
the inside, you know,
the inside
and
and
the inside
outside.
is articulated with the outside, and means this is the immanent plan of the entanglement of the between inside and outside.
Intent, inside and outside. So now that you believe that cyberspace has the potential of articulating the other, can it imply to the fact that cyberspace can have the potential of enhancing and reinforcing national identity by the way that it is articulating the other? It is articulating the other.
Yes.
So on the other hand, on the other side, we have the nation who needs to stand on the other side of that's pure other.
Yes.
So does it refer? Does your belief imply to the fact that this articulation of otherness can be kind of uniting the nation and the cyberspace?
You know, I mean, ontologically, um, every phenomenon needs the other phenomenon. You know,
So it is
to me,
just sorry. It is just the reason where we need security. We articulate the other. We articulate the danger, and then we need the security. We articulate the security. True.
mm, maybe yes.
So in this articulation of the other, we can, and somehow I think that cyberspace can have the potential of being a kind of affective milieu, as a kind of discourse which provokes the emotions of a nation to encourage or discourage some behaviors. And then these behaviors, when they are performed, they guarantee the sustainedness and the stability of a culture and thereby the national identity. What's your idea, Dr. Voevoda or Dr. Kia?
Um, well, I do not fully agree with that, although, well, I think there is some, well, there is a definite reason to believe that partially Dr. Kier is right. But no, I don't think that I can fully agree with you. That's it.
Excuse me, I can't hear you.
Yes. Well, I think the yes, I think there's something wrong with the volume.
Yes, I think something.
Oh,
Yeah, our connection has been interrupted.
yes. Well, again, I've been now the sound is on and off intermittently.
But I can hear you.
Well, I've been trying to say that there is very much logic in what you say, but nevertheless, to me, it does not change the fact that global identities may be, well, it may be a fact of very distant future. Although, yes, we cannot get away from modernization. It is in what we live. And again, this concept of myself and an alien, well, this is all very well explained theoretically, but what I see in practice is something different. Although I repeat, there are lots of people, especially young people, who feel very cosmopolitan and say, well, we live in the globalized world. Another friend's daughter lives nowhere. She's a citizen of the world, although she has a Russian passport. She lives in Bali, she lives in London, she lives somewhere in Kazakhstan, she lives everywhere. And occasionally she comes to Moscow. She's child-free. She neglects the family, although she had 3 brothers. She grew up with 3 brothers, but she's very sophisticated, and but probably it is what we are in for. But I repeat, not in the near future, in my opinion. Although things are changing so fast, we do not know what gadgets, what devices. It's not even devices, but the artificial intellect. Well, it may replace everything. It may change our life drastically and completely.
Yes. I don't believe that international identity removes completely the national identity. I don't believe that. But what I'm trying to introduce my idea is that international identity affect the national identity. This affection this affection with different intensities is really important, and to me, ontologically, every phenomenon needs the other phenomenon in order to exist. Without the other phenomenon, each phenomenon cannot exist, and based on this ontological point of view, the 21st century is a new era of the otherness. I think historically, human has been engaged with the other, but in our eras, the engagement is with a high intensity, and this is the specific difference between digital situation in compared to analog situation for me. Okay.
Well, Dr. Kia, do you mean to say that this otherness as a phenomenon of the 21st century will be more individualized rather than all-embracing at otherness on state or community levels? Well, it seems to me that when people speak about others today, they speak about each individual as a separate world. I'm different from all the rest of the world. And again, that's a very American idea. I'm sorry. I remember the situation I read about 7 years ago, described by a Russian mother living in the United States, when her son went to school for the first time, and returned. She asked him, "What did you learn at school today?" The traditional question, and he said, "I learned that I am the only boy like I am in this world. I'm unique." And that is why the word I is capitalized. So I, this individual attribution, is the center of this, let us say, naturally individual identity, but probably in the cyberspace, it is not just the capitalized letter I, like the pronoun, but it is I, me, and myself that make the whole world. And then naturally, national identity will vanish. I quite agree with you that we cannot study one phenomenon without another phenomenon, at least one more phenomenon. They should be compared. But again, speaking very I repeat that it is, for me, it is difficult to predict, to work as Cassandra and predict what we are in for in the next 10 years. That's why I tried to describe what we're having today, what we are living through today.
Okay. We don't hear you.
I can hear you now, but...
Yes, but I mean...
oh, Leila.
I got connected and I missed most of the discussion.
Yes.
Okay.
We saw your lips moving.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I missed most of the discussion, and I wish Dr. Kia answer your question, because actually I have lost the thread of the discussion. I don't know where you are. It's I suppose it's about the way that the otherness is kind of individualized discussion rather than being a worldwide phenomenon. True?
Yes.
So do you believe that if we depict the otherness and the level of individual, can't we apply it to the way that the state is governing the country and treating the other? Of course, the other is can't be just in the level of individual. Each country depicts its the other as the other nations, whether geographically or whether based on culture. I remember recently I was reading one of the speeches of Mr. Putin. It was his speech on last February on the reasons they have the war in Ukraine. And he believes that one of the reasons is the cultural reasons that Russia was feeling a kind of cultural threat of West. That is, he believes that is one of the reasons. So I myself believe that cultural threats is not something which we can regard it in the level of individual, though it must be in the level of governing a country. Of course, we have the, maybe we can call it international, or we can call it country level, the other, which is threatening. Now, this threats or this the other is constructed via cyberspace. And both your country and our country are regarding Western culture, which is being spread via cyberspace as a kind of threat to our national culture, which preserves our bonding, our unity as a national identity. Though there are some people, especially some Western scholars, who believe that cyberspace or globalization even hurdles Western culture. At least I believe that most scholars in your and our country believe that globalization is a kind of exert of Western power, which is threatening, and which is, as Dr. Voevoda described, which is painting our countries black. And the way that these depictions of our countries affects our nations, and cyberspace affects the real way they are treating and the kind of their feelings to the way their, maybe let's say, their pride, national pride is lessening, it's fading, and thereby the national identity is fading. But I myself, if you ask me, we can conduct different researches on the level of individual to see how cyberspace and globalization, cultural globalization, affects individually and even in the level of country to scale how the intensity of being globalized can affect national identity. Anyway, for both of our scholars, for both guests, I suppose that they feel kind of threat of cyberspace threatening our national identity. What do you think, Dr. Kia?
I don't agree with the term threat. I think it's better to talk about the potentiality.
One.
Potentiality is not threat yet. And it's not a I don't know. It's not a positive or supportive point. It's really not materialized, and I think potentiality is a better term to think about the other, or otherness, or internationality versus the national identity. Let me explain more. I pose this question: how does nation state deal with life? Life as a process of transformation is what I mean. Does the nation state has the capacity to provide the experience of new forms of life? The capacity to experience new forms of life is the sign of power, exhibiting the quality of experimental life as a specific relation between nation and a state produces propaganda to show the power of the nation-state relation. Experimental identity is the result of the fold and unfolding relation between nation and state. Experimental life is life as an art. Life as an art emphasizes creativity and ethics. Now I refer to the book What is Life by Lynn McLeese and Doreen Segan. In this book, they note that life cannot be reduced to the genetic sequence, emphasizing interdependencies uh, and the relational bonds between living entities. This explanation of the matter of life is in the term of social life hints at the point of diversity, difference, and variety in modes of life. The project of the nation state is the projection of modes of life. This experimental and ethical union of the nation and state is a power to invent new values for different modes of life and development them. For example, the creative economy is the economy of introducing new modes of life and investing in them. So the experimental type of relation of the nation state has the power to stimulate desire. Now I want to bring out my total idea that the other's desire in the outside can be affected to join to the introduced modes of life by the nation state creative relations. Most of life as proceeding machines are controlled by ongoing nation state. An ongoing nation state produces and circulates information as a kinetic force for the motor of the machine of most of life. Moreover, the ongoing nation state calculates information to estimate ongoing most of life. The progressive life of the ongoing nation state is the capital of up-to-date values. Then for every other in the outside, the milieu of the progressive life is a favorite haunt. The progressive life has actualized the capacity of transformation to achieve up-to-date experiences. Therefore, the progressive life becomes a favorite haunt for the other to enter and seek to actualize his or her potentiality in life. Progressive life is based on the production, circulation, and calculation of information. Information has a wave movement and move through digitalized channels. Beyond the dichotomy of online and offline, in the post-digital era, there is on-life contained digitalized channels in which waves of information moves. The ongoing nation state transforms progressive life into information and sends it through digitalized channels. The progressive life is simulated in information and circulated in channels, and then progressive life has the power of affecting receivers. There are a variety of receivers, among them the other exists in on-life geography in which the other at the same time is in the inside and outside. In other words, the on-life geography in the on-life geography, the other exists inside and outside. Therefore, the other is affected by receiving information about the progressive life, and the other's desire and intention are attracted to different possibility of modes of life. The ongoing nation state has the capacity to has a capacity of informing the other about the possible modes of life through information. The other wishes to experience a new mode of life in the milieu of the ongoing nation states. Accordingly, every nation state has a um, excuse me, every nation state with an inadequate capacity to produce most of life and information to integrate them is more an imitator of most of life and up-to-date values of living proposed by the ongoing nation states. Libidinal motivations, desire, and attractive attention are specific forces in the post-informational and post-digital eras. Then the main influencing variable is the capacity to influence the mind, attract attention, and affect desire by providing and suggesting different modes of life, creativity, experimental life, and life as an art. In sum, any nation state that is unable to actualize these mentioned features actually is more an imitator than an inventor of most of life.
So your discussion about the capacity of cyberspace to influence the mind and
Attract attention, especially.
attract attentions and construct desires, and the way that receivers are imitating, they are more. Do you believe that there are more passive receivers who are just imitating?
Imitating information and proposed modes of life and thoughts. Um,
So, in other
um,
words, simply we can put it like that. It's kind of discourse producing knowledge about the way the right way of doing things.
you know, I introduced ongoing nation state. This term for me is a
It's not
capacity.
stable. It's just you're believing in the fluid nature of it.
Exactly, and this type of nation state relation has a capacity to introduce new values of life and most of life and most of thoughts, and cyberspace is a milieu for this type of nation state relation to produce propaganda for this type of life, for this type of lifestyle, for this type of nation state
So
relation. As you know, it's a kind of capital
it's
information or capital of up-to-date values, and I think Western culture has this capacity to sense information, to sense through digitalized channels the new values of life, the new values of identity, and this type of nation state relations um, affect the desire, the
the
libidinal
so
motivations
it's
of the countries
which
which
receive it and respect them as better, as
yes,
modern.
exactly, which don't have um,
That same that same maybe human
the
that
sufficient
values which are
capacity
respected
to
globally.
introduce new values. You know, when you can introduce new values, then your people imitate the other values. You know, I think in cyberspace, every nation state has to
Produce this.
provide new capacities to provide and to introduce and new modes of life, new values as a um, as an important
Uh,
item.
uh, so
Really?
it's you are you're discussing both about the potential of cyberspace, both in bonding the nation. On the other hand, the cyberspace as a way for even for geopolitical potentials in enhancing the state of a nation globally. And it sounds that you're going along with what I talked about, effective milieu, cyberspace as a kind of effective milieu. True? Sorry.
Well, I would like to add that I think it's necessary to be very careful. I quite agree that it's an interesting idea, but I think we should be very careful about new values and about borrowing new values, because because recent decades have shown a decline in moral values. Well, what values can Western culture offer or introduce now? And again, I don't want to repeat myself, but we'll live and see what the artificial intellect brings to us, where it will lead us, where it will take us. It sounds all very interesting, but after all, a person who wants to or who would like to get something new, something wonderful from life, you say, well, the individual needs something to make him or her happy. Well, who will give this happiness? Who will give this fruitful life? It's not cyberspace. Although maybe cyberspace, well, it's multifaceted. Cyberspace has already embraced hundreds of aspects of our life, and you can get something from here, something from there, not necessarily from your own state. But again, is there access to something that an individual would like to consume? And when we speak about the geopolitical aspect, again, well, here we are, Russia under sanctions. And we are trying, and I think that we are trying in a way more or less successfully to do without the products or the services that we have been denied. But if we say that cyberspace will provide it all, now come, cyberspace does not provide me with free access to the Zoom platform. That is, I can freely use 40 minutes, but I cannot pay and get better services because we are under sanctions. Our banks are denied certain services because they're under sanctions, and so on and so forth. And who knows what other idea Mr. Biden or a new Mr. Biden or someone who stands behind him, he's so frail and fragile. We don't know what other idea that someone will have, what someone will bring to the cyberspace. That's why I say that it's not threat, probably. Threat is a very strong word, but there are risks of living in the cyberspace. But there are risks in living in the traditional space as well. We can't get away from it. And then speaking about this fluctuations of national cultures, ethnic cultures, you know, it was It was not 10 years ago, it was much, much earlier that the term third culture kids appeared. And third culture kids appeared before cyberspace became a new reality. They don't belong anywhere. They grow up living in various and in different cultural worlds, first moving with their parents from country to country. They know several languages, but they have no connections and they have no commitments. They have no home. There is no place they can call their home. And again, I've talked to two third culture kids. They're quite happy about living their life. Well, some are happy, some are not. That's why, when we speak about the benefits cyberspace can give us, yes, they're here. When we speak about the risks, they're also there. But Dr. Kia, I appreciated listening to you. It makes one think differently. It makes one consider somebody else's viewpoint, think it over, and decide what we can fish out of that conceptual idea. So thank you very much for this very very convincing speech. And I'm sorry that I've been arguing with you all the time. I didn't want to be impolite.
Thank you, Dr. Voevoda. And we were really glad to see you here, and Dr. Kia the same way. And here I have a message from the head of the University of, let me see, where did it go? From Dr. Kolomi, the head of the Institute of Sociology. I'm not sure about the name of the institute. Sorry, I don't know where. By the way, Dr. Kolomi, I would like to appreciate both professors for accepting the invitation. And I missed the message, sorry. And
خانم دکتر میخوایم من براتون بخونم؟
دارید شما متن؟
بله.
I cannot stay until the end of the meeting. Let me make a point. In my opinion, the totalitarianism of huge corporation centered on the United States in cyberspace is unsustainable and has challenged freedom and justice in cyberspace. This is the new imperialism. This imperialism makes the people of the world suffer. The world must think to face this challenge. Maybe the theory of 2 or 3 internets can be investigated, like Huntington's multi-globalization. What is wrong with cultural diversity and lifestyle diversity being recognized? So it was the words written by dear Dr. Kolomi, the head of the university. The rector of the university, actually.
Yeah.
The head of the department, and as long as I know, he is the rector of the university. So I myself would like to appreciate both of the professors for accepting the invitation, and it was my honor and pleasure to be in this meeting. I learned from both of you, and the vivid examples Dr. Voevoda depicted from the way that Russia takes measures against this, let's use Dr. Gholami's words, against Western cultural imperialism, or the way he is, or the way Russia is trying to unite this bondage and working on national identity. It was very interesting. And as I have the experience of living in Russia and working somehow on Russian culture, I'm very interested in the way that Russia has one of the main policies to reinforce national identity. And recently I worked on Russian parks and the way that national identity is being reinforced in parks, different celebrations and different festivals, and the way that institutes to internalize Russianness and national identity. And thank you, Dr. Kia, for the philosophical elucidation of this issue of cyberspace and national identity. I learned so much from you, from both of you. Thank you. If there is any more case to be discussed, please. Dr. Kia, any more?
Thanks for having me. But before before the end of this discussion, I think it's really important to ask what is the national identity before asking the international identity and how international identity threats the national identity. I think national identity is for me is problem and first we should think about it and then find the new relation between the national and international. First historically, and then in our contemporary time. I learned a lot, and thanks for having me. And I would appreciate Dr. Voevoda for joining this meeting.
And thank you. I would also like to thank the organizers and Leila Khadem in person for this very energizing meeting, thought-provoking, and for the opportunity to exchange ideas and hear what we feel and think about this problem, the problem which is vital today. Thank you very much.